a silent courtroom, a million inheritance, and a daughter, once abandoned, at 4 months now, standing face to face with the parents who left her behind. They claimed family comes first. She arrived with 32 years of evidence. I focus on the scratch in the wooden rail in front of me, tracing its path with my fingernail. The morning had been spent establishing my grandparents' love. Now it was time for the counterattack. Cynthia and Keith's lawyer, a man whose suit probably cost more than my first car, strides to the front. "Your Honor," he says, his voice dripping with false sympathy, "we've heard this narrative of a loving granddaughter, but the defense conveniently ignores the financial abandonment my client Cynthia suffered. Arthur, in his later years, became controlling and punitive, cutting his only daughter off." I feel Jenna's hand gently press on my arm. "Stay calm," he continues. "We have statements suggesting my clients were forced to live in near poverty while Miss Kayla was positioned to inherit everything." I almost laugh. Poverty. The word hangs in the air, absurd and obscene. I think of the glossy postcards they sent from Milan, from Tokyo, from street barts. Jenna rises from her chair, her movements slow and deliberate. She's holding a single thick binder. "Your Honor, I'm glad counsel brought up the topic of finances. We have a rather different view of financial abandonment." She walks to the podium. "This," she says, placing the binder down with a solid thud, "is the financial record of wire transfers from Arthur's personal workshop account to Cynthia and Keith's joint account, spanning the last 25 years. A murmur goes through the courtroom. My mother Cynthia shifts in her seat. Jenna's voice is clear and sharp. The plaintiffs claim they were cut off. The records show a consistent monthly payment of $5,000. She pauses, letting that sink in. Every month for 25 years. We also have records for additional emergency requests. Jenna looks up, meeting the judge's eyes. The total amount transferred from the man they claim abandoned them, $1,500,000. Gasps. Someone in the back row actually says, "Wow." My father, Keith, looks like he's been punched. My mother's perfectly applied lipstick twists into a snarl. She isn't looking ashamed. She looks furious. Jenna isn't finished. $1,500,000, she repeats. Which brings us to the question of poverty. What does one do with that kind of supplemental income? She picks up a second file. "Your Honor, we'd like to present the auction records from 3 major Boston and New York contemporary art houses, all cross-referenced with the plaintiff's credit card statements." Now, my mother goes pale. "May 10th, 2001, Jenna reads, her voice like ice. "Kayla's 10th birthday. A wire transfer for $10,000 was requested by Cynthia for dental emergencies. That same day, auction records show a payment of $12,000 for a contemporary sculpture." "Objection," their lawyer shouts. "Relevance." It goes directly to the heart of their claim of financial abandonment and poverty, Your Honor, Jenna replies calmly. "Overruled. Continue, Counselor." December 18th, 2008. Kayla's high school winter concert. An email from Cynthia, which we will submit next, states they cannot attend due to work obligations. Bank records show a transfer of $40,000 from Arthur. Auction records show a winning bid of $45,000 for a minimalist painting placed by Keith. Jenna paces slowly, looking at my parents. And finally, May 20th, 2015, Kayla's graduation from her restoration program, an emergency request for $30,000. And a winning bid 2 days later for a piece of installation art for $32,000. Jenna closes the file. It seems the plaintiffs weren't suffering from poverty. They were suffering from an expensive hobby, funded entirely by the man they are now claiming was of unsound mind. I watch my mother. The fury in her eyes is unmistakable, and in that moment I finally understand. I'd spent years wondering how they could be so shameless, how they could take so much and still demand more. It's the entitlement of the empty wallet. To them, that $1.5 million wasn't a gift. It wasn't kindness. In their narcissistic worldview, it was an obligation. It was the bare minimum Arthur owed them, simply because Cynthia shared his blood. They believe they are the true heirs, and that money was just an advance on the inheritance they deserved. My existence, my work, my 30 years of presence in that workshop, that was just an inconvenience. My inheritance isn't a gift from my grandfather to me. To them, it's theft. I am stealing what was rightfully theirs. Seeing the auction records didn't make my mother feel shame. It made her feel exposed. She wasn't embarrassed by her greed. She was furious that her rightful allowance was being used against her. I look away from her back to the scratched wood, and I feel something cold settle in my stomach. This isn't just about a workshop. This is about a fundamental sickness in their souls. No further questions at this time, Jenna says, returning to her seat. My father is staring at his hands. My mother is glaring at her lawyer, whispering furiously, her face a mask of rage. The first crack in their perfect victimized facade had appeared. The satisfaction from the auction records was short-lived. My parents, humiliated in court, decided to move the fight to the press. The Boston Art Review, a publication my grandfather Arthur used to respect, ran a front-page story, "The Artisan's Apprentice Loyalty or Deceit." They painted me as a calculated manipulator. They quoted anonymous sources, which I knew was just my mother's social circle, who described me as cold and opportunistic. They claimed I had isolated Arthur, turning him against his only loving daughter. The words felt like acid. Colleagues at the museum, who had been supportive now, offered tight, polite smiles in the hallway. I received anonymous emails at my work address. Shame on you. You'll get what's coming to you. I retreated to the workshop that night. The smell of old wood and metal oil, usually a comfort, now felt like a tomb. I sat at Arthur's workbench, holding one of his tiny brass gears. This was my low point. They weren't just trying to take the workshop. They were trying to rewrite my entire life, to erase the 30 years of love and presence my grandparents had given me. The next morning, my mother Cynthia took the stand. She was a vision of tragic motherhood. She wore a simple navy dress, her pearls gleaming. She dabbed at her eyes with a delicate handkerchief. I just wanted my father's love, she whispered, her voice breaking perfectly. But he only had eyes for Kayla. When she came along, it was like I ceased to exist. Her lawyer gently guided her. And your relationship with your daughter Kayla, I tried, she sobbed, a single perfect tear rolling down her cheek. I tried so hard, but they wouldn't let me. Arthur and Elias, they built a wall around her. They poisoned her against me. What kind of mother wouldn't want her own child? The gallery murmured in sympathy. I watched her not with sadness, but with a cold, clear rage. I had seen this performance my entire life. The victim, always the victim. I felt Jenna's hand on my wrist. Wait for it. When her lawyer finished, Jenna stood up. She walked toward the witness stand, carrying a single, dusty, leather-bound book. It was one of Grandmother Elias's old workshop ledgers. Mrs. Cynthia Jenna, began her voice soft, you've testified that you tried to have a relationship with your daughter, but that your parents built a wall. Yes, Cynthia sniffed, dabbing her eyes. They were very controlling. I see. Jenna opened the book. This is your mother Elias's workshop ledger from 1993 to 2003. She kept meticulous notes on everything, every order, every client call, and every personal call. Cynthia's hand, the one holding the handkerchief, paused. Your mother, it seems, noted every time you called home. Jenna ran her finger down a page. Let's look at 1999. Kayla's 8th birthday. You didn't call, but you did call 3 days later, May 20th. Jenna looked up. Do you recall that call, Cynthia? I don't remember. It was so long ago. The note here says, Cynthia called. Needs $10,000 for a trip to Paris. Didn't ask about Kayla. My mother's face hardened. The tears stopped. Let's try another one, Jenna said, flipping a few pages. December 23rd, 2005. A call from you. Not to wish your family a Merry Christmas. The note says, Cynthia called. Needs $25,000 for a down payment on a new car. Jenna turned another page. June 2008. Cynthia called upset about the stock market. Needs $15,000. She turned again. August 2009. Cynthia called. Keith lost his bonus. Needs $20,000. Jenna stopped flipping and looked directly at my mother. In the 10 years covered by this single ledger, your mother Elias logged 180 calls from you. The courtroom was silent. Jenna continued, we cross-referenced them with your bank statements. 175 of those calls corresponded with a large cash transfer within 24 hours. 5 of them, Jenna paused, appear to have been wrong numbers. The mask didn't just crack, it shattered. The tragic weeping mother was gone. In her place was a woman, vibrating with pure, unadulterated rage. Her eyes, identical to my own, drilled into Jenna with a hatred that chilled me to the bone. The gallery's sympathetic murmurs had turned to whispers of shock. No further questions, Jenna said, closing the ledger with a quiet thud. My father Keith is staring at Cynthia with a look of pure disgust. Her lawyer looks like he swallowed a wasp. The courtroom is practically buzzing. This is the moment where they should have folded, where any rational person would have cut their losses. But they aren't rational. They're desperate. Their lawyer stands up, shuffling his papers. Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Aaron. Aaron Bell to the stand. I look at Jenna. She's frowning, flipping through her witness list. Who? A man in his 50s wearing a bow tie and a suit that looks a little too shiny walks confidently to the stand. He has an air of self-importance that immediately sets my teeth on edge. Mr. Bell, their lawyer begins. Could you please state your occupation for the court? I am an independent appraiser and art authenticator, he says, his voice booming slightly. I specialize in 18th and 19th century clockwork and mechanical art. My stomach clenches. I know exactly where this is going. And did you have occasion to review the later works of the deceased Arthur? I did, Aaron says, adjusting his bow tie. At the request of the plaintiff, I was given access to the workshop blueprints and several of the more complex later pieces. And what was your professional conclusion? Aaron sighs, as if bearing a heavy burden. It was troubling. The early work is masterful, precise. But the later pieces, especially the large mechanical sculpture, the clockwork tree, he shakes his head. Frankly, they are inconsistent. The designs are erratic. The craftsmanship shows signs of instability. In my professional opinion, these are not the works of a master at the height of his powers. They show clear signs of cognitive decline. The words hit me harder than the newspaper article. He was attacking Arthur's soul. He was declaring my grandfather's masterpiece, the beautiful tree that he and I built together, as the work of a failing mind. So you would say these pieces are inauthentic. Inauthentic, as representations of his known skill level. Yes, Aaron says gravely, They are erratic, suggestible, the work of a man who could be easily influenced. I'm gripping the table so hard my knuckles are white. He's lying, I hiss to Jenna. The tree is perfect. Arthur was innovating, not declining. Jenna just pats my hand. Breathe, she whispers. He's all theirs. Their lawyer sits down looking impossibly smug. The courtroom is quiet. The weight of the expert's testimony hanging in the air. This is their trump card. The proof that Arthur was senile. Jenna stands up. She doesn't have any papers. She just walks calmly toward the witness box. Mr. Bell, thank you for your time. That's quite a serious claim to make against a master artisan like Arthur. It is, Aaron says, puffing out his chest. But the evidence is in the work itself. Of course. Now, you said you're an independent appraiser. That means you have no personal stake in this case. None whatsoever. I am an impartial expert. I see. Jenna smiles a tiny, dangerous smile. And what is your relationship to the plaintiff, Cynthia? Aaron's confident expression flickers. I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you related to her? We are acquainted. Socially. Mr. Bell, Jenna's voice is no longer soft. Are you or are you not her first cousin? The color drains from Aaron's face. My mother, Cynthia, looks like she's about to leap out of her chair. Objection, their lawyer yells. Ad hominem. It goes directly to credibility and his claim of being impartial, Your Honor, Jenna says smoothly. The judge leans forward, looking at Aaron over his glasses. Overruled. The witness will answer the question. Aaron swallows. Yes, she is my cousin. The courtroom erupts in murmurs. The judge gavels them to silence. So Jenna continues, not so independent after all. But let's talk about your expertise. You specialize in clockwork. I am one of the most respected authenticators on the East Coast, Aaron says, trying to regain his footing. Are you? Jenna asks. She walks back to our table and picks up a single sheet of paper. That's interesting. Because I have here a record from the American Society of Appraisers dated 5 years ago. She hands the document to him. Is this your name on the list of permanently revoked licenses? Aaron stares at the paper as if it's a snake. Objection. Relevance. Your Honor, Jenna says, turning to the judge, this expert witness had his credentials permanently revoked for selling 3 counterfeit 18th century clocks to a museum in New York. He is not an expert. He is a fraud. Denied, their lawyer screams, but it's too late. Aaron is visibly shaking. That was a misunderstanding. Was it? Jenna presses. Was it also a misunderstanding when you were found liable for fraud in civil court for that exact sale? Aaron stares speechless. His face is a waxy, pale color. You are not an expert, Jenna says, her voice low and clear, cutting through the silence. You are a disgraced con artist brought here by your cousin to perjure yourself and slander the name of a true master. She turns to the judge. The defense moves to strike his entire testimony, and we ask the court to consider sanctions against the plaintiff for knowingly presenting fraudulent testimony. The judge looks at Aaron. Get off the stand. Aaron practically falls out of the witness box. As he scramps away, I look at my parents. My father Keith has his head in his hands. But he's not looking at the judge. He's glaring at Cynthia. He leans over, and I can just barely hear his whisper, a hiss of pure venom. You brought him, your idiot cousin. You've ruined us. Cynthia's face crumples, not in sadness, but in the terrified rage of a cornered animal. The alliance was broken. Their entire case had just self-destructed. The judge calls a final short recess before delivering his ruling. The air in the courtroom is thick, but the tension is gone. It's been replaced by a quiet, heavy certainty. The self-destruction of their case was total. Jenna squeezes my hand. Go get some air. It's over. I nod and step out into the marble hallway. I'm heading for the water fountain when I hear her voice. Kayla. I turn. My mother Cynthia is standing there, alone. Keith is nowhere to be seen. The performance is gone. No tears, no handkerchief. Her eyes are cold, assessing like a businesswoman who just had a bad negotiation. This has gone too far, she says, her voice low. I just look at her. You started it. Don't be naive, she snaps. This, all of this. She gestures to the courtroom door. It's just noise. When it's done, you and I are still blood. The word hangs in the air, toxic and heavy. Blood, she repeats, stepping closer. That's the only thing that actually matters. Not workshops, not ledgers. Blood. She tries to manufacture a smile, but it's a terrifying, stretched grimace. We can stop this right now. Tell the judge we've reconciled. We'll split it. 50-50. It's the fair thing to do. Mother and daughter. I stare at her, truly seeing her for the first time. The desperation, the absolute hollow emptiness inside her. She's trying to use the very thing she abandoned me for, family, as her final bargaining chip. I think of Grandmother Elias, her hands patiently guiding mine, teaching me to weave the rare golden thread. Patience, Kayla, she would say. Presence. That's what gives it value. I think of Arthur, his grease-stained fingers, tapping the blueprints for the clockwork tree. Precision, child. You can't fake precision. You have to show up every day. I look back at my mother. You're wrong, I say, and my voice is steady, clear. Blood is an accident. Presence, I say, is a choice, and you chose to be absent. Her face twists. You ungrateful. No, I say, cutting her off. Not with anger, but with finality. I'm done. I turn and walk away, leaving her standing alone in the hallway. As I walk back toward the courtroom, I don't feel anger. I don't even feel sad. I feel light. For 30 years, I've carried this invisible weight, this guilt, that I wasn't good enough to make her stay. I realize now it was never about me. It was about her. We're taught that cutting ties with toxic family is an act of cruelty, of abandonment. But it's not. It's an act of preservation. It's not about rejecting them. It's about finally choosing yourself. It's about honoring the people who did choose you. It was the only way to protect the legacy of Arthur and Elias. Letting go of the mother who never was the only way to hold on to the grandparents who always were. When I sit down, Jenna looks at me questioning. I just nod. I'm ready. We all rise. The judge enters and sits. He clears his throat and looks out over the courtroom. I have reviewed all evidence and testimony, he begins, his voice neutral. Sometimes cases of inheritance are complex, mired in emotion and ambiguity. This is not one of those cases. He looks directly at my parents. The plaintiffs, Cynthia and Keith, have failed to provide a single shred of credible evidence that the deceased Arthur was of unsound mind or under undue influence. In fact, the defense has provided overwhelming evidence to the contrary, including his own meticulous blueprints and workshop ledgers, demonstrating his sharp, innovative mind until his final days. Therefore, the plaintiff's claim is dismissed. With prejudice. I let out a breath I feel like I've been holding for a year. With prejudice, they can never file this suit again. It's over. But the judge isn't finished. He puts his glasses on and looks down at his notes. Furthermore, This court does not take kindly to its time being wasted. The testimony of the witness, Aaron Bell, was not just biased, it was fraudulent. It was a coordinated, deliberate attempt to mislead this court and to slander the reputation of a respected Boston artisan. He looks up his eyes, finding Cynthia and Keith. His voice is now steel. This lawsuit was frivolous, vindictive, and brought in bad faith. Under state law, I am ordering the plaintiffs, Cynthia and Keith, to pay for the defendant's reasonable and entire legal fees. A sound escapes my mother's throat, a half scream, half gasp. It is the most satisfying sound I have ever heard. Jenna's hand claps down on my shoulder, squeezing hard. My father, Keith, just sits there shrunken, staring into the middle distance. He looks like a man who has just seen his entire future evaporate. The judge bangs his gavel. This court is adjourned. It's been a year since the gavel fell. I left the museum. The work there was important, but this is essential. The workshop is no longer a silent monument to the past. It's loud. It's filled with the sounds of ticking, sanding, and young voices. I used a portion of the estate and the money recovered from my parents' legal fees to establish the Arthur and Elias Scholarship. It funds young artisans who have the passion, but not the connections to learn the craft. This morning I'm leaning over the shoulder of our first scholarship recipient, a young woman named Maya. She's struggling with an embroidery hoop, her needle hesitating over the fabric. "You're afraid of it," I say, gently. "It's just—" "This is the golden thread," she whispers, referring to the spool of rare thread Grandmother Elias left behind. "I don't want to waste it." I smile, placing my hand over hers. "Elias taught me that materials are meant to be used. Their value isn't in sitting on a spool, it's in the attempt. Go on." She takes a breath and pushes the needle through. A perfect, gleaming stitch. Behind us, there's a soft, whirring sound, followed by a series of precise, delicate clicks. Maya looks up, her eyes wide. "It's noon," I say. We turn and watch. The clockwork tree, the masterpiece my grandfather and I built, the one Aaron called erratic and inauthentic, is putting on its show. I spent 6 months restoring the final sequence. Slowly, tiny brass branches begin to unfurl. Silver gears turn, and one by one, a dozen intricate copper flowers open their petals, blooming in the light of the workshop window. It is precise. It is perfect. It is alive. My grandfather's legacy isn't just protected. It's growing. I look at this place, at the work, at the young artisan beside me, and I think about everyone who watched this story, everyone who felt that familiar ache of being on the outside. To you, the one who always felt like you didn't quite belong in your own family, the one who sat at the holiday table and felt invisible, to the one who was told you were too much or not enough. Your value was never determined by the people who chose to leave. It wasn't defined by the invitations you never received or the love that was always conditional. Your worth is defined by your presence, by the fact that you stayed, that you tried, that you built something beautiful in the space they left empty. Family isn't always the blood you were born with. It's the people you choose and the people who choose you back. It's the legacy you build with your own 2 hands. You don't need to fight for a seat at their table. You just need to build your own.